Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today we need to talk about 2022 for hopefully the last time for a while. I'm hoping to transition into full policy for quite a bit of time until we can actually have real things to talk about in the elections. But I've been seeing a lot of tweets on Twitter, people posting videos, and general commentary that's essentially been along the lines of, man, the Democrats are in a tough place for 2022. They're going to have a hard time. And while that's not a bad take, I do think it is a very shallow take, if you follow me, because it relies on one piece of information specifically. The incumbent president loses support during the midterms. You see, when it comes to election prediction, a lot of people like to view it less as like a science and sociology, and more like a game. You know that card game? It might have been Mao. I can't remember, where you have where you're playing the game, but only one person knows the rules, and you're trying to figure out what they are. That's how people come at this. They go, aha, I figured out the rule that during the midterm, the incumbent president loses support in their party. Aha, I figured it out. I figured out a rule. Now I'm always going to use that rule because it always happens. But that's not how humans function. To give you an idea, if we're looking at control of the House and the Senate and the presidency over the past couple of years, you can see, while there is some level of incumbent president loses support in the House or in the Senate, it's actually not necessarily the case. As you can see, in all 3 elections during Obama's tenure, he actually slowly gained support in the House of Representatives. He didn't flip the House, but he didn't lose support. He actually gained it ever so slightly. And as you can see, rule of thumb for a really long time was Democrats control the House no matter what. What happened here is about when the Dixiecrats finally went over and flipped to the GOP, and you see this sudden change. But rules aren't set in stone, is what I'm saying here. And I think it's actually a really bad take to say the GOP is favored to win in 2022, because of 5 reasons I'm going to go over right now. First off, the main one, the cutoff in funding. The 147 House representatives who voted against certifying the election results in Pennsylvania have seen massive, massive donor cutoffs. And it's likely also Representative Senator Hawley of Missouri will also lose funding come election season for 2022. Now, the GOP is left with a tough call here. Do they either A, continue supporting these candidates, putting money into their campaigns, and hoping that these corporate donors will come back, because 1, they might not, or 2, even if they do come back, you need to hope the American people forget, and there isn't a big scandal where people go, hey, these guys said they weren't supporting these candidates and now they're supporting them again. Or they try and use some means like put money into the RNC, and the RNC provides these guys money, because that's just lending itself to bad campaign ads too. Or does the GOP primary these candidates, in which case you are primarying literally 2/3 of your House caucus, your House party, and really hoping you win and not causing an even bigger split than the one that's already occurred. And here's the other thing. It can't just be, oh, well, we'll leave these seats and we'll probably win, because these aren't their safest seats. Plenty of these seats, and guys who voted against certifying the results, are people who won pretty tight districts. We're talking like New Mexico, Minnesota, stuff like that. One of the more famous ones was, I think, the one for Justin Amash's seat. These guys aren't in, like, super safe Republican races. Quite a few of them are, but a lot are not. So the GOP needs to be strategic, otherwise they're losing those seats. And while they can risk a primary to Hawley, Still, that's not a good look. And it also doesn't help that the impeachment vote has already happened, so it's not hard to tie these guys to Trump and piss off suburban voters, which leads me into my next point. I think the suburban vote has shifted. I think 2018 and 2020 have shown us suburban whites have left the GOP and are now voting Democrat. These guys are the guys who showed up every midterm to vote Republican. These are the guys who used to go, well, I'm socially liberal, but I'm fiscally conservative. They've finally flipped. It became more important to them to be socially liberal and defend their gay neighbor from, being fired or evicted than it was for them to get some tax breaks. There was a level of morality in all of this that has finally shifted. And these guys turn out, I'm seeing all of these people going, well, the Democrats are in danger. Republicans were able to turn out some low information, low education voters in 2020 that the Democrats should have won because they were either black or Hispanic. And in 2022, Republicans will have a 100% perfect turnout rate of these groups. No, those groups aren't the ones that show up in midterm elections. We've been over this before. Republicans holding suburban votes is what was flipping seats in midterm elections. Now the Democrats have those votes. We saw that happen in 2018. We're probably going to see it in 2022. To go back to our little chart here, this is all suburban voters. This is all suburban voters. All of this is suburban voters coming out and supporting the GOP. They have finally seemingly flipped, and it's going to be tight, I'm guessing. But that's not a good place to be in when you're the GOP, and you need to motivate people to vote. And a lot of your guys went, well, we hate Joe Biden, the vanilla ice cream of presidents, and we're for Donald Trump, the shit sandwich of presidents. It's hard to make an argument when someone says, I'm against vanilla ice cream but pro shit sandwich. Now for these next two, we need to go into the bit of a hypothetical category here and go to the bill that the Democrats are most likely going to pass called H.R. 1. They're also probably going to pass a bill called H.R. 4 that would restore the Voting Rights Act. But most importantly, in H.R. 1, it has two massive effects. First off, huge voter registration and early voting proposals. These will not only guarantee people have access to the ballot, but they can get a mail-in ballot with ease. It's becoming very clear what helped flip Georgia and make many states in the South a lot more competitive was early voting and voting by mail. Now, that also helped the GOP. They got more votes, too. That's the reason why we saw a sudden spike in this election for a good chunk of it. Just people got ballots and voted by default. But it's making it very, very, very easy for people to register to vote and to vote. You've got automatic voter registration online, same day. You've got paper ballots and early voting, restoring the rights of non-imprisoned felons. All of that goes together to get a bigger voting base for the Democrat, plus pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds, which also will help the Democrats who win young voters by a stupendous amount. But there's one other thing in here that's going to be really, really important to helping the Democrats, and I can't find the exact provision. Here it is. Independent redistricting commissions. Right now, in the House of Representatives, it's believed there are about 58 seats that are solidly gerrymandered to a single party, guaranteeing it to them when those seats should be competitive. And about 20 of them are Democratic, and about 30 of them are Republican. Give it so 24 Democrats, I think 34 Republican. Meaning Democrats actually gain a net total of 10 competitive seats. Now, there would be 58 new competitive seats in total, but Democrats need more competitive seats. If you have states like Alabama, Tennessee, Texas specifically, really in Texas, that are going more blue and now are more competitive, and you've got all of a sudden, you've eliminated this Republican backbone they have been relying on during the Obama years and during the Bush years, but really during the Obama years to get these numbers. To lose it is not good for them in any way, shape, or form. And the other important thing, and this is going to come down to the Senate, the potential additions of Puerto Rico and D.C. I know everyone's talking about Puerto Rico and they go, well, they're a little bit conservative. They might vote Republican. Donald Trump tried to let them die during a hurricane. They aren't going to vote GOP. They might vote their own party, who remains third party, but mostly votes with Democrats, a little bit with the Republicans, but probably they're going to vote for a group that would align with the Democratic Party, giving the Democrats 4 more senators. And as I went over in my other video about which House seats are, which states are going to be important for the Senate, it's going to be Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina. If Democrats have 4 seats on top of this, it doesn't matter if the GOP wins all 3 of these, because 1, there's only 1 net gain there, but 2, it means they are fully and totally on the defensive. And lastly, we need to go over one really key factor here, the Trump effect. 1, all of these guys can still be tied to Donald Trump. Every House representative, every senator in the Republican Party. That's at least 2 years of negative campaign ads that can be used against them. But more importantly, looking at Donald Trump, and I tweeted this a couple of days ago, people are unwilling to admit that Donald Trump is some weird anomaly. And that when he's on the ballot, the GOP just gets more votes. Like, it has to be a scientific method of, well, low-educated voters come out. In this case, I'm sure you can find the mathematical equation, but there's a very simple formula I like to use. If Trump is on the ballot, Republicans will gain 10% more than they were expected to gain. That has shown when compared to the polls. We saw this when comparing Georgia-Maine to Georgia runoff. We've seen it when comparing 2018 to 2020 and 2016 to 2018 and stuff like that. When Trump's on, so if the Republicans would normally get 1 million votes, they would get 1.1 million if Trump was on the ballot. And here's why that's important. And this is a very, very rough metric. If Trump wasn't on the ballot, let's say it was Ted Cruz and he had done all the same horrible crap, they would have lost Florida, they would have lost North Carolina, costing them more seats in here, and probably quite a few in the House as well. But also, they would have lost North Carolina in the Senate as well, and I believe Alaska, and quite a few of these would have been much more contentious. Alaska would have been really close to flipping, probably within recount territory, and many of these seats here, such as Texas, Iowa, Ohio, even Maine's 2nd District, would have been so much closer. Republicans need Trump. They need to invoke that specter in order to get those votes. Otherwise, they're in a tough position. But they don't get without Trump on the ballot. And they have currently created a massive schism between the establishment and Trump's side. So, right now, looking at 2022 from over a year and a half away, it's looking really good for the Democrats because the Republicans have shit the bed and lit it on fire.